Hello, I'm Ollie and this is Criminolly, where I talk about crime, pulp, horror, that kind of thing. Today, indie westerns, cosy fantasy and disturbing serial killers. It's my weekly wrap-up. It is once again very warm in the UK, and it's very warm in this room where I'm filming this video. So if I look a bit rosy, apologies for that. I'll try and get through it as quickly as possible so I don't melt. Normal format for this. I'll talk about what I've been reading, talk about what I think I'm going to be reading next, and talk about some stuff that's been on the channel as well. I'm not going to talk about stats this week because I've got a load of books that have come in that I haven't got around to logging yet. Which means my stats probably don't look very good, so I don't want to think about it. I'm definitely not achieving my goal of reading as many books as I have books come in. But nevertheless, I have managed to finish 6 books this week, so that's pretty good going. I did have a day off during the week, which helped, albeit it was a day when I was doing loads of chores, so I'm not sure it made that much difference. But I've read a few kind of quicker things this week, I think, so that's probably why I've managed to get through 6 books. So let me start by talking about those. So I'll start with the one physical book. Most of the reading I've done this week has been on Kindle, but I did read one physical book, and that was Birdman by Mo Hayder, which I did a buddy read of with Alice from the channel Alice and the Giant Bookshelf. This was really good. Oh, and thank you again to Juan from Plagued by Visions, who sent me this copy of Birdman ages ago. So apologies it's taken me so long to read it, Juan. But it was really good. So a British serial killer thriller, like police procedural type thing from the late, is it the late 90s? I think it's either 1999. I'm not going to talk too much about it because I am going to do a review of this because it was one that was recommended to me by viewers as a disturbing book. So I read it as part of my disturbing books project. I'm not convinced it was that disturbing, but it was certainly very graphic and very horrible at times. So just really gripping and compelling. You really wanted to find out what was going to happen, and it's definitely made me want to read more of the books in this series by Mo Hayder. So yeah, if you like thrillers, I definitely recommend this. Moving on to westerns then. So read a couple of westerns this week for June on the Range, both of which were like independently published ones. So I read Lone Ranger Vendetta by Howard Hughes. Hello, it's Editing Ollie here. Clearly Lone Ranger Vendetta was not actually by Howard Hughes, the famous industrialist and business magnate. It was in fact by Howard Hopkins. So apologies for that error. Which was a Lone Ranger book, which was really fun. So you think of the Lone Ranger as being quite tame, don't you? Whereas this was quite violent, quite graphic. Basically about a gang of criminals who've got something against the Lone Ranger and are trying to get revenge on him. Had some fantastic shootouts, really tense. Not a long book, I think it was like kind of 150 pages or something like that. But packed with action, thoroughly entertaining and just a really good solid western. The other western I read was slightly different, but no less entertaining. In fact, it was probably even more entertaining. So I follow on Instagram like an independent western publisher called Dusty Saddles. And they publish loads and loads of stuff. So I was looking on their website. People think of westerns as being a dead genre, but there are still loads of westerns being published. And Dusty Saddles publish a ton of stuff on Kindle, all of which I think is on Kindle Unlimited. So I sent them a message and said, I'm doing this western reading event. Recommend me a book from your catalogue that you think I'd enjoy, and if you could give me one with a female protagonist, so much the better, because kind of a lot of the westerns I've read have featured male protagonists. So they recommended to me a book called A Woman by Any Other Means by an author called Laura Strickland. It's actually called A Woman by Any Other Name. Clearly the heat was getting to my brain, so apologies again for screwing up. Which is part of a series about this female bounty hunter whose name now escapes me. Irene Wicklow, I think she's called. Irene Wicklow, Bounty Hunter, I think is the name of the series. And Laura Strickland, by the looks of it, has published loads of different books in various genres. So kind of romance and fantasy and like historical stuff. And is doing this series of westerns as well. It was really fun. It was a bit bonkers, but it was really fun. So it's about this woman called Irene, who goes by the bounty hunter name of Wolverine. And she pretends to be a man. So everyone's perception of Wolverine the bounty hunter is that it's a guy, but it's actually this woman Irene. And she's teamed up with this guy who and they're like having a bit of an on-off relationship as well. So there was a strong romance element to this. You've also got the fact that Irene has a like kind of psychic connection, telepathic connection with her horse. So she and her horse, who's called, what was the horse's name? I've forgotten the horse's name now. It was like Jezebel. I think it was Jezebel. So she and the horse have this psychic connection, which means she can kind of tell what the horse is thinking. The horse can kind of tell when she's in trouble, which was a bit crazy, but actually was very entertaining and worked well in. Once you bought into that, it was well used within the book. So this one, as I said, there's a series of them. In this one, they're going after this 7 foot tall Swedish guy, I think he's Swedish, European guy anyway, who's a lumberjack, who's gone crazy at this kind of lumberjack camp and killed loads of people. So he's like roaming around the forest with his big axe, and they have to try and bring him in. It was just really, really fun. It was a really entertaining book. Slightly bonkers. Definitely didn't take itself too seriously, but I had a really good time with it, and it's made me want to read more in that series. In a similar-ish vein, in terms of being slightly horror-ish and very silly, I also read Werewolf by Moonlight by Guy Smith. So this was Guy Smith's first book. So if you don't know Smith, he was a very prolific British horror writer in the kind of 70s and 80s in particular, died a few years ago, and was publishing right up until his death. And best known for the crabs books, so he wrote a series of books about giant killer crabs. Werewolf by Moonlight, more of a traditional kind of werewolf book about this, so set in a rural community, about this young guy who gets infected by a werewolf. He actually gets bitten by a dog, but the dog has been infected by a werewolf, and basically does werewolf stuff. So fairly standard stuff, heavy on the sex and violence, very pulpy, but really quite entertaining. I did enjoy it. Then read a more modern horror novel, which was similar in some ways, certainly in terms of being set in a rural community and things like that. So this is one that was sent to me by the publisher. The book is called North Border, and the author is Benjamin Percy. So I am going to do a review of this because I had a really good time with it. I thought it was a really interesting book. But basically it's a horror novel set on the border between Minnesota and Canada. About this young guy who's half white, half Native American, who works as a border guard on the border, but there's weird stuff going on. So like people keep on turning up dead, and they've obviously been ravaged by some sort of beast. So similar in some ways to the werewolf book. I'm going to do a review of that. The thing that I found particularly interesting about this book was it's illustrated, and the publisher Neotext, I think quite a lot of their books are illustrated, and it was a really nice addition to the story. The illustrations were really well done, and they did give the book something a little bit extra. So yeah, really, really enjoyed that one. And as I say, I'll do a review of it. Also read this week Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree, which is a book that's been getting a lot of attention. So this is a fantasy book, which was just really cute. So it's about a female orc who's decided to give up like fighting and treasure hunting and set up a coffee shop basically. And it's just about her building up the business and the friends she makes along the way. So it was definitely very cutesy, very cozy, a bit cheesy at times. I think in the end it felt to me like it was a little bit too cozy, in that by the kind of final third I was a bit switched off to it. But it was entertaining and there was some nice humour in it. I did enjoy it a fair bit, but it's not something I would necessarily really get in, shall we say. Cute and fun, but fairly disposable. I've also continued to read or listen to an audiobook this week. This book, The Auschwitz Detective, by Jonathan Dunski, which is a mystery novel set in Auschwitz. So very troubling and disturbing at times, but it's got a good solid mystery at the heart of it. I have nearly finished it. I'm probably about 80% through. So I'll report back on this one next week in my weekly wrap up, no doubt. And I'm also currently reading another book that was sent to me by a publisher. So it's a book called Three Aces, and the publisher is Stark House. So this is quite interesting. So it's a collection of three like vintage kind of pulpy noirish novels that were originally published by the publisher Ace, who were quite a really big publisher in the 50s and 60s, I think in particular. Well known for their Ace double science fiction books where you get like a book on each side. So there's three of these noirish kind of mystery novels in this collection. I'm reading the first one at the moment, which is called Gilded, Hideaway by an author called Peter Twist, which is really fun. It's quite sleazy. It's about this guy who's basically stolen a load of money, like basically through fraud rather than kind of traditional theft. He's stolen a load of money and run away to Mexico to hide, and it's about the various characters he meets there. So yeah, quite cheesy, definitely quite sleazy, but I am enjoying it. So I'll probably finish that today and carry on with the other two books in that book. So I'll report back on the whole book, Three Aces, next week. And then up next, I think will probably be Trainspotting by Irvine Welsh, which will be a reread from me. I read it when it first came out. That's the pick this month for the Birth Year Book Club that I run. So yeah, probably be reading that. And then aside from that, I did have some other westerns on my TBR for the month, but I think I'm not really in the mood for them. So I think I'm just going to pick something at random from the shelves and give that a try. And then in terms of channel stuff, so in the last week you've had a few reviews as normal. So I did a review of The Summer I Died by Ryan C. Thomas, one of Lone Women by Victor Laval, and a video as well about the Edge series of westerns. And I also put up my top 10 books so far of 2023, if you fancy seeing what those are. In the week ahead, a couple of reviews. So I'll be doing a review of Birdman, as mentioned already, and North Border. I've also got going up my launch video for Garb August, my Trashy Books reading event in August. I filmed the intro for that this morning, which is probably the most complicated thing I've ever filmed. So the intro lasts just over 50 seconds, and it took me about 2 hours to film and edit it. It's quite complicated. There will be a very short sneak preview of that intro at the end of this video, so stay tuned for that if you want to see the kind of thing you should expect in that launch video, which will be going up on Tuesday. And then aside from that, probably also going to do a book talking about some of the books I might be reading for the event BookTube at War, which takes place in July. So I hope you found that interesting. Do let me know what you've been reading this week. Let me know if you've read any of the books I talked about. And as always, thanks very much for watching. Hope you're safe and well out there. Hope you're reading good stuff. And I'll speak to you again very soon. Cheerio. Huh? What the...